You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Wayne Butterfield, and I am your host, Lasse Rindom. Hi, Wayne, and welcome to The Only Constant. I'm really happy to have you on this episode today, and I've been really looking forward to doing this show with you.
Excellent, and I can't wait to get started. I've listened to the other episodes, I've seen the other guests, and I know I have a lot to live up to. So thank you for inviting me on, mate.
It's brilliant. And we've also been talking for many times over the last couple of years, and I always enjoy our chats. And that's also a key reason why I think it's interesting to have you on The Only Constant. But let me just start it off with the question. A couple of years back, UiPath had a marketing campaign where they said that RPA is the new ERP. I don't know if you remember that one. I think
Yep.
everyone who worked with automation and RPA remember that particular marketing campaign because it was so outrageous. So my question is here is anyone ever gonna say AI is the new ERP, or are we just waiting for that, or is AI even a product the same way as RPA was? What do you think?
Great question. Will someone ever say it? I'm sure they will. But your second question was probably the one that was more pointed. If you think about AI, it's like saying automation. If you think about a strand of AI, it's probably like saying RPA. So I would suggest that you probably wouldn't hear somebody saying that AI is the next ERP, but you might get somebody saying a generative AI layer is the new ERP. And I've certainly heard already that there are people, technologies where you may well say that an ERP, a CRM, or any other system is just a database, and that the layer over the top of that is where we will have, maybe it's a voice layer instead of a click and move and click layer. So I think there's going to be an evolution of systems in the future. I've If you've ever looked for images of futuristic automation, what you'll see is these glass screens with people pointing in the air. You It probably doesn't make a great it doesn't make a great visual if someone's talking to a system. Hence why you always see people pointing at these things that appear to be floating. But I think we are getting to a point where some form of AI will be the layer that we interact with ERP CRMs. Whether it will replace them, I just don't think we will get that. But I will guarantee that somebody will at least say that their AI is the new ERP, CRM, or whatever. They will definitely follow the lead of UiPath a few years ago. And we are a few years on, and we definitely don't see RPA as the new ERP, right?
No. I remember Gartner also had an article in 2014 saying that your next boss might be a bot, right? And it's sort of the same vein where how wrong that was at that time, how immature it was, and I can't even see the current generative AI being my next boss, to be honest. Even though it's way better than the RPA bots we've seen. I
Absolutely.
think though that to be fair on the UiPath uh, campaign, it was more around people will be trained as much in RPA as they were trained in ERPs. The change management aspect of RPA would be as grand as the change management of the ERP revolution. I think that was, when you read into it, that was what they were trying to say. That was not the headline, and that's why
Mhm.
you can criticize the headline, because that was essentially what most people read. And uh, then, but if we do it like that, then there is some kind of similarities to it, Wayne, right? That everyone has to be trained on these new generative AI technologies. It comes
Mhm.
down to something a little bit like the same, doesn't it?
Yes, and interestingly, some of the work I'm doing with clients now, would you believe, is actually around training. it's retraining people to work in different ways, and it's subtle. A lot of what we are seeing at the moment with the use of generative AI is, as people call it, co-pilot and assistant. And just like you mentioned ERP, CRM, you never just put in SAP, Salesforce, and just say, "Hey, do work," right? Because you'd be scratching your head thinking, "Well, how do I do the things that I already do, but using this system instead of that one?" So,
Mm.
training, change management, and all of these things are really going to be, uh, uh, if not more important than what they have been historically. The only way, and I think in 2019, maybe it's 2000, a little bit earlier, I basically said that the winners and losers of the future in business will be those that get their employees to work best with AI instead of trying to replace their employees with it. So
Mm.
it's those who can harmonize the latest and greatest technology with the brilliance of their people that will be the most successful, because we're not ready as a race to be overtaken by these AI overlords. We're not quite ready to just give up work. Work gives us a purpose. Purpose prolongs our life, and so we really do have to think about how we marry what we do with the technologies that we can now use, and that harmony will be, as I say, the kind of the catalyst for, I think, future ways of work. Um, and I'm a big supporter in the. I like the term co-pilot,
Mm.
assistant, those type of things. I think that is definitely what I see the future, at least over the next kind of 3 to 5 years. Us just working alongside an AI is going to be where I think we will see most value and most benefit.
But that actually was something I thought of this morning when I drove to work. I said, "Oh, I'm gonna ask Wayne about this as well." So, and now you already touched upon it. Actually, is there are basically three ways, right, or three waves of AI. I, I think Mustafa Suleiman does it in waves, and where you have analyzing AI first, or what do you call it? It's not analyzing; it's something different, another word for it, but analyzing, basically analyzing data, making assumptions on data. That's what we've had previously.
Mhm.
Then you have the augmenting stage, and then you have the autonomous stage in the end.
Mhm.
So I'd say augmenting or autonomous. Wayne, what are you believe in the augmenting path right now, don't you?
Definitely, yeah, and I think as much as AI is and continues to, and I'm going to say, impress me, I think historically I've been less than impressed, um, with the vast majority of the outcomes that it would be able to produce.
Mm.
Um, And for anyone who has been in and around this space, the rhetoric has been, "We'll do the simple stuff," and AI will do the simple stuff, and will leave any form of complexity to people. Right? That has been the rhetoric for what, a decade, maybe. You think about
Mm.
RPA, you think about chatbots. More recently, conversational AI, even things in voice recognition, IVRs, literally anything and everything where AI has touched work, it's been on that simple stuff, right?
Mm.
And every piece of complexity, just about, has been left to people. We are now getting into a position where complex knowledge work is now able to be at least assisted by AI as a result of generative AI, and then some of these different kind of forms of how to use Gen AI with RAG. So retrieval augmented generation, as an example, where and like, say, small language models that are trained on very specific data sets. Suddenly, we have an ability where we're no longer mansplaining everything, but we're able to be an expert in some very specific things.
Mm.
And I have seen superb examples that I've worked on where I am blown away almost by how quickly we are able to become an expert in a very narrow topic.
Mm,
We've always spoken about narrow AI, being very good at a single task, which is fine. But I think being very good in a very narrow um, topic, a very narrow kind of skill set, is where again I think we're going to see most of the value come from generative AI, because mansplaining gets you so far. As soon as you need some real expertise, I think most of these extra large models start to struggle somewhat. But I continue to be impressed, let's say, by how good the types of responses can be when you use large language models, but then very specific training data sets. And I think that for me, over the next 3 to 5 years, is what is going to drive the biggest shift in how we work with
mm.
these co-pilots, and is going to drive probably the certainly the largest amount of efficiency in roles that to date have not been touched by many of the automation tools of yesterday.
Yeah.
So I'm excited because I believe what we're going to see with AI over the next 3 to 5 years is going to drive as much efficiency in complex work as we've seen over the last decade, let's say, with the simple work, the back office, the grunt work, the swivel chair, whatever you want to call it. It's been work that has been deemed simple enough to either be outsourced, or automated. And now we're getting into the stuff which is generally not outsourced because more often than not, it's deemed as too complex. It's completed by people who have been to college, and those people are generally on six-figure salaries. That is like a new frontier. And that is why I think this wave that we're about to undertake, if we talk about simple automation. Now we're getting into, let's say, wave two of complex augmentation.
Mm.
I think that's what's getting me really excited right now.
But Wayne, you're I know you're a consultant as well, just like me right
Mhm.
now, and there is this, I get this feeling that you're sort of speaking, although you're very eloquent and you're very careful not to do it, and all really the nice British thing you've kept since, although you've moved to Texas. I know you're in Texas right now, right?
Yeehaw! Yep.
Exactly. So, but you're still I think you're speaking in two different directions here. So you're saying that we need to keep humans there, keep us engaged, and be happy. And it's all about the human experience. And you like the co-pilot, you like the way it's supposed to just assist us being a little bit better. That sounds nice when you're speaking to a large audience of workers, right, or a union or something like that.
Hmm.
But then at the same time, you're saying that now we can actually remove or optimize high value work as well, and even complex tasks. So simple
Augment.
tasks are really simple.
Mhm.
Augment, yeah, yeah, yeah. But augment. If you say you're super impressed, and if you augment, if you augment 50% of someone's work, you've half the department, right? You.
Yes, but very, very true. And what I am seeing, and I think every form of AI automation is about driving efficiency. And I think this is a really great um, point that we should spend some time on. Like,
Mm,
what is the point of what we're doing? Right? What is the point of just being more efficient?
yes.
Like, who actually benefits from it? Right? Shareholders, yeah,
I
and
spoke to Dr. Jeffrey Funk last week on the podcast, and we sort of, I can't remember how we got there, but he mentioned that researchers, university researchers, had become someone who basically administered work. They were administrators. They were reviewing other people's work. They were just writing quick articles all the time instead of sitting down, contemplating, mulling over things for months. They just had to produce, produce, produce. And then I said to him, "So we've made researchers." something that could be automated by AI. So we
Hmm.
turned them into that by changing what they have to work with. Is that the same thing with the efficiency? See, we've seen over the last 40 years, everything has to be measured, and lean, and processes. No one works outside of their work stream. Everyone focuses narrowly on this and that. And when they focus narrowly on this and that, we can teach a bot to focus narrowly on the same things. And whoopsie daisy, it's automated.
Hmm. Great point. Great point. What is it that we have done? I don't know. If you think about, what is the purpose of most enterprises, right? It's to create and sell some form of product. And I guess over the last, let's just say, 100 years, the way of work has evolved. New departments, new roles, new
Mm.
systems, new processes, all of these things. And what are they all geared towards, right? I presume it's profit, being as profitable as possible. And profitability probably stems from efficiency. So the more efficient you are in getting A to B, potentially the more the cheaper your product could be, or the more profit you could gain from that product. um, and automation is seen as that next wave. It's like that is feel like that's the reason why I end up doing what I do. And this is probably the only time I've even thought about this as a question in the sense of a business, but it does have to come down. It's basic economics. This is
Yeah, 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 I get
we
it.
are we
What you're
are
just saying is there's nothing groundbreaking where you're just, whoa, we're operating for profit. Oh, Wayne, you're spilling the beans, from here. Whoa, it's epiphanies, right? No,
Yeah.
but the question of why efficiency and why then automated, that is an interesting one. It's just like the question with that I think that generative AI is raising is what is our intelligence, that kind of mirror all the time, saying why are we doing what we're doing if we can automate it? Why are we
Mhm.
intelligent if it's not intelligent? All of those questions, right? They suddenly come to the fore. Um, but I've always said with the previous automation journeys, it was all about streamlining your processes, because in the end of streamlining and documenting, you would have an automation, and that's what everyone wanted to get to. But right now, that might seem just a little bit more, little bit bigger than just that. Just it's not just a small automating, putting an invoice into an ERP system anymore. Now
Mhm.
it can actually understand and it can interpret things that used to be the human domain, right?
Mhm.
And it seems a little bit more fundamental to how we work now. Don't you think so? And you've worked in automation for a long time, I know as well. So, and you're global lead for ISG, right?
Yes, I mean, if I think about when I first started getting my feet wet in driving operational efficiency, it originally started with process improvement. We completed over two 1.5 million transactions a month or something in my back office that I was responsible for, that we'd outsourced. And went through that, process improvement, looked at what we were doing, looked at how we could be more efficient. This was just using people and process. 2010 got my first RPA bot proof of concept going. Anyone who's heard me
Mm.
speak before knows that it also almost got me fired as well at that point. And then I just realized there is there is this new wave of technology. And again, I was only very young in my career at that point. I just realized that I really liked the ability of using futuristic technology. And believe me, RPA in 2010 was futuristic. We
Yeah,
know now, that it is still a simple technology, but for most people back then, it was, people just thought it was going to be robots on desks. And I
we still
get to
thought that 10 years later. So
Mhm. Yep. And so all this drive to be more efficient using technology is really what has just been in and driven my career now for a long time. And for some reason, I'm obsessed with it. Um, but I'm also a realist in the sense that the human brain still now is still by far the greatest tool in the toolkit as far as doing work. I
Mm.
still believe the reason why we have got decades to go before we land at something like the autonomous enterprise is because the vast majority of work, how we do work, has been created with the human brain right at the very center.
Yeah.
And until we rethink work in a completely different way, and I still haven't got my head around what that completely different way is, but until we get the human brain out of the loop, then the thing that we are going to be driving is efficiency. We're cutting out the amount of human interaction, inch by inch, till we get to a point of the autonomous enterprise. Like, I
You
feel
know
like,
what? You're making a very, very unpleasant, what do you call it, knot on on the discussion. If I take my discussion with Stephen Pemberton, who said that the only time we will really adopt a new technology is when the old generation dies. He's 70 years old and was a pioneer in the internet age. Uh, and you're saying that we need to get rid of the human brain. Don't ever tell that to any bot, Wayne. I'm afraid that this will become a new a new
let's
a
make
new
sure this
program
isn't
that none of us will like.
Mhm. Well, let's make sure this isn't used as training data in the future, right? So,
Yes.
and it's not get rid of the human brain. It's in most process the problem solving ability of the human brain, that reasoning ability, that ability to look at something
Hmm.
and be able to, without much compute, know what the right type of solution is, or have that reasoning ability to say, well, I don't know, but I know this person that knows. Like, all of that there is just something that right now is incredibly unique to people.
Hmm.
Um, and we know that people who build and write processes know that they don't have to think of every single edge case whenever a process is built or created, because people are able to solve problems
Yeah.
to get the job done.
We have a world model. I think Jeff Bezos said that on the latest installment of the Lex Friedman podcast. That I think it's 50 minutes in, actually, or something like that. I saw
Mhm.
someone pointing that out, and that's why I heard it. Where he said that the human brain is still so much more efficient. That it
Yep.
doesn't have to read all this data. It doesn't need that much compute power to come up
Mhm.
with things that just make sense out of the box. Almost, it has a world model. It understands what's going on, and it even argues with itself. If you have you seen now? It's like there's a multi-agent thing going on. Have you seen this epileptic studies from the 50s where they actually
Mhm.
cut the brain in halves because the epileptic seizure spread from the left brain to the right brain. So they
Mhm.
just cut it in the middle on what is that bridge called or something. They cut that, and then the seizures actually stopped. It worked. But what they found out was that asking people about what do you want to be when you grow up? And one of them could speak, one half would speak, and the other half would write with a pen. And then the one would say something like, I want to be a doctor, and the other would say, would write a carpenter at the same time. At the same time. So that just means that the human brain is not at all linear. The human brain is very much something that discusses with itself, has multiple
Mhm.
agents also evaluating what's the right response right now. It just goes so super fast because it's a super efficient system. That's just what I wanted to point out. And I think that makes sense on what you just said as well.
Mhm.
That the human brain is still very much more efficient and knows more about what's going on all the time. And the thing is, maybe let's see if we will. Everyone's like new things are happening all the time in AI. And sorry, now I'm just talking here, but we haven't really seen groundbreaking new AI technology since that all you need is attention paper in 2017, the transformer.
Mhm.
If you just think about it, the transformer is the new tech.
Yep.
And what we have now is just incremental, making it smaller, better data to quality improvements, making it faster. That's the whole Mistral announcement last week. That's what we're doing right now. We're just making it more spread and proliferate into everything. but we don't seem to right now have any idea how we're going to give it a world model or make it something that could rival us.
Mhm.
I still see, hallucinations, context issues, jailbreaks, all those things. They're inherent in the in the architecture,
Yeah.
don't you think?
Mhm. Um, yeah, I mean, and again, it depends really what we're looking to create. You know, are we looking to create an AGI and an artificial general super intelligence, or I know really, are we just trying to automate work?
Hmm.
Because if what we're trying to do right now is just create efficiencies in work, then how much more right now do we need? Because we're still trying to uncover the stuff that was discussed in 2017. And I think I heard, I can't remember when I heard this, but basically, if we did no more research from today on AI, we would still have at least a decade's worth of stuff that is
Yeah.
already researched, that is already, half written or understood, that just hasn't necessarily made it out into either the public domain, maybe it has, but certainly not into the enterprise yet. So, we continue to make progress, but I think the more interesting question is to what? To what end?
Hmm.
Like, what is it actually that we continue to try and make progress for? And why do we need an artificial super intelligence or an artificial super general, why do we
I
need
think
these?
Wayne, I've got you on some existential crisis thing here. What are we solving? You're puzzling around that. I think Kai-Fu Lee says that generative AI will give education to the masses in the poor countries because they don't have the infrastructure for schools and
Mhm,
teachers, right? That is something that is very tangible, a real change, right? In my opinion, something we're actually solving. From an affluent point of view, where I live in Denmark or where you are in Texas, maybe we don't see that as much. We see an extra report or analysis on our BI or whatever. It's not that there are some things where we're gonna. I also saw a study on legal AI and legal practices where those that were performing the legal the lawyers that were performing worse were actually lifted by AI, while high
mhm.
performers were left untouched. Is that the pattern you think we're going to see?
Yes, interestingly, I think, and I read somewhere a little while ago, but I've used it in presentations since, that where we where we are as a race
Hmm.
is that the generative AI is the potential transformation for the masses with generative AI is similar to where we were with the printing press. You might be like, the printing press? Well, why not the PC or why not this? If you think about the printing press, you think about before the printing press, most most documents are knowledge. So if we think about most knowledge, was handwritten and hoarded by the few.
Hmm.
Okay. And so, if knowledge is hoarded by the few, then the masses are, they don't know what they don't know, and no one's telling them, right? So again, similar to your compute and knowledge in third world countries, etc. If you think that the printing press basically took single copies, handwritten knowledge, and basically disseminated it across the world, right? That's what it did. And suddenly, we all know what everyone knows, at least what's written
Yeah.
down.
And suddenly we wanted a German Bible and everything. Yeah.
And so you were now able to understand history and what had happened before, and become more educated. Gen AI now is, I think it does two things. For those who don't have access to education, it potentially gives them access to education, but it also, the interesting thing is, it also provides creativity to some, and I also would say experience.
Hmm.
And that's the difference here. It's not just knowledge, but experience and creativity. Like, that is potentially the next wave of things that Gen AI is going to allow people to have access to. And so, if you think about the things that we're able to create with Gen AI that you might not have been able to create yourself as a standalone, music, films, of course, content, images. we're able to now, at the almost a touch of a button, create create songs. So think
Mm.
about people who don't have access to music labels or haven't had the access to all of the software that you might have needed in order to create the next number one hit in Denmark, the UK, the world, right?
Yeah.
Or think about filmmaking, like how incredibly expensive is it to make films, and how much of that do you need, cameras and equipment. So it's expensive and it's difficult, and suddenly now we have an ability where, in the palm of your hand, or pennies, we're now able to create, be creative, create content and films and all of these things. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And no one can have a better iPhone than you can have, and no one can have a better GPT-4 than you have. It's there's some democratic elements to this as well, right?
exactly. And again, it's global. All you need is connectivity. Now, the key difference here really is connectivity, and ensuring that, although these models can run on phones, if you have a 3G network versus a 5G or a 6G, you are still going to have an advantage over a disadvantage. But you are at least able to democratize creativity and experience, to the masses. So I think there is a fundamental change that Gen AI is going to create across the world on a more of a social level, um,
Mm.
as opposed to just anything else. So I think it does have this ability to do more for society if and when used in the right way. And of course, it can clearly be used in the wrong way, and as can most technologies.
Yeah, yeah, obviously. But what about then? What about then? One of the first things I read, I think half a year ago. I can't remember who wrote the article. I can't find it again. I think it was someone who wrote something and published it himself. But it was really neatly and well put. I'm really annoyed. Maybe if I troll back in my activity on
Mhm,
LinkedIn, maybe I can find it. But I have to go way back. But the point is that imagine Gen AI makes every student perform to a minimum of a B, grade B, or
mhm,
something in school. But it also makes some A students perform to a grade B. So it becomes a
mhm,
magnet, a best practice magnet, a mediocrity magnet, but a
mhm.
high level mediocrity. Everyone is performing quite well. But is that a good thing for us to just have everyone become reasonably good, but lack those brains that used to take us to the next level by being, extra careful with what they're doing, extra contemplative. I can't say that word. Extra thoughtful. Uh, to get what I'm getting at, as
Yeah.
I said to Jeffrey also last week, Newton, he mulled for 40 years, he didn't publish, but
Mhm.
brilliant thoughts just sitting there in his desk, right? Just
The issue that you kind of have here, you can call it the great leveler,
mhm,
um, and that is good for those who are improving their level, but at what cost to both themselves and those that are, who have unique thoughts. We do need to be very mindful that, again, the human brain is an incredibly powerful capability, and it's also unique, between most people, right? Most
mhm,
people, very few people think, act, compute, whatever, the same, right? That's what makes us all individuals. And so a great leveler of the human brain, I would suggest, is probably not a great thing for society, and it's certainly not a great thing for the world if we all become the same. And I,
mm,
and I know we'll always act differently, but if we are all thinking the same, using the same, coming up with the same conclusions because we've become heavily reliant on co-pilots, then that uniqueness that each individual has, the thing that makes, you know, us good consultants, or these people great doctors, or these people incredibly creative artists, there is a there is a worry that we become a vanilla race and we all become the same, and that actually sends us backwards. And you
Mm,
mentioned the 2017 report on Transformers. Well, there are only certain people in the world who are wired, let's say, in ways that help us think beyond today.
mm.
And so there is that risk that we stagnate, here, if we do all become, level.
But for
So,
something like most enterprises, operations, right? If you took it, if you just turned it around and looked at the enterprise, said, okay, everyone should have best practice. We've said, I think that was what people said 15 years ago. You should just do this. You should do at best practice level, and just quickly increase your efficiency levels to that. And now we have a technology that can help us do that quite efficiently and quickly. So give us a B grade and everything we do. That's best practice.
mhm.
But do we want that for enterprises, don't we?
Well, I think what you want is you want that for transactions.
Hmm.
But
Yes.
so if you think
For
about
sales, you want leading practice, right?
yeah, you want it for, if you think about, a business going back to, what we said before, it's products that you want to be able to ship, sell, ship, and be used, right?
Hmm.
In the main, most enterprises, whether it's selling an insurance policy or selling an iPhone, that's kind of what you want to do. And so, for a large portion of the vanilla process, you probably do want best practice. Why? Because you want to drive an efficiency. But do you want best practice in your marketing? Well, if your marketing is the same as everybody else's, then what differentiates you versus an Android, a Samsung, or whatever when you're an iPhone, right? So,
Yeah, you must assume that everyone has something that makes them unique, and that's why they exist on the market, right?
I think every company needs something that makes them unique, so that they can
Hmm.
continue to exist. And so, if we think about this as the great leveler, um, again, going back to some earlier points, the great leveler can be around enterprise, but again, the what makes us and companies unique is going to be really, really important, even more so. I spoke about, you have stem cells and Hecky cells, skills. And so you have these Hecky skills that are, humanistic and passionate and empathetic and imaginative. Like
Hmm.
those, I've been saying that those are the skills that we will need to rely on as we move into the future, so that you know as most people become more robotic in the way that they complete work, because we've leaned everything out. They've all got co-pilots. Everyone's following a best practice. Now we are just robots, and the things that will differentiate people in the future away from that kind of robotic nature is those Hecky cells. Like how do they break the mold like that? I say this to my son. I'm like, he's a unique thinker. He's a brilliant problem solver, and but he doesn't necessarily want to sit down and do work at school. And
Hmm.
I'm torn between telling him he has to work hard and do the things that he is being told to do, versus knowing that that uniqueness of thought is the thing that will separate him from most other people in the future, as long as he can find the right role and company. Like that uniqueness of thought is the thing that gives me confidence that he can be a success in the future, not that he can be a B student alongside
No,
every other person who's a B student.
but there's something. I spoke to someone the other day where we discussed this, and everyone 50 years ago were all about wearing the same suits and looking like each other in the enterprise, in the business workplace, and that was status was looking like the rest of them, driving the same black cars and wearing the same
Mhm.
blue suit, right? But now it's all about standing out and being a little bit different. We sort of with sort of uniformity and order is not the ideal, because we have systems that take care of uniformity and order for us to some extent,
Mhm.
right? I think there's some things going on there. And I've also said that I think I wrote in a LinkedIn post a month ago that we will be buying vinyl in an age of streaming, like we are today. People are buying
Mhm.
vinyl records while they have everything on Spotify. And what's even going on with that? So is that the
Mhm.
same things you're alluding to here, Wayne?
I think so. I think, the worry with, as I say, if we call it the great leveler, the worry is that we there is a I have a fear that we lose something.
Hmm.
um and everybody loses something, right? Because if you think about, the magical moments in life, very few of them are driven by a standardized process, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's experiences, magical experiences. I just took my kids,
You
wife,
didn't
and
have an SOP to your kid upbringing, and you didn't have that. Oh,
no, no, no. We went and do Christmas stuff yesterday, right? And there's it's an experience. It's like, there's lots of lights and like nice settings, and you have photo. It's like there's no process there per se.
no.
We kind of did something that was outside of the norm, and that created a warm feeling, an experience. The chemicals go in your brain. It's like the experiences are things that people, we talk about experiences. I think they become even more important. Most people, even when they're using phones, it's an experience that they become used to, but somebody had to think outside of the box massively when they created the first iPhone, right? We went from Blackberries.
Hmm.
I was having this conversation the other day. Do you remember this block with tiny
Yeah,
keys,
yeah,
and you would
yeah.
type emails on these phones, right? You went from that to this, and it's like that is it's that we don't want to lose. Like that imagination, that ability to
It
think
was also
completely
technology,
outside.
right? Receptive screens did a big thing for making. I tried earlier touch phones where you had to touch really, you press
Mhm.
really hard, didn't work. Receptive
Yeah,
screens, the new ones that came, we should, of course, Steve Jobs and the whole Apple team were brilliant and inventive, but there's also some technology just going on there, just because if you had these hard pressed touch screens, it would have been terrible. So
yeah. But
technology always moves it as well.
think about every single tiny evolution of technology comes from someone's unique thought.
Mm,
Okay, every single incremental little step is because someone's thinking a little different. And
yeah.
in an age of uniformity, where everyone potentially tries to think the same, how do you continue to evolve? And that
You
to
just
me
called it
is,
that. I love that. An age of uniformity, Wayne. That's gonna be the headline for this one. I'm writing it down because I love that. But it also brings me to another question. I'm seeing if I can catch you here on the wrong foot. So where is actually the best use cases, Wayne? Because I think if you ask most consultancies, they'd say marketing and
Mhm.
writing copy, product descriptions. But you just said that's probably not where you'd want uniformity. You just said that. So
Absolutely. Well, I think if you look at the research, they reckon that there was four places originally. IT and code, marketing
yeah.
and customer service, right? Where this technology probably is best. I'll tell you the bits that are getting me really excited right now. And again, most organizations, when they're benefiting, let's just say from Gen AI right now, it's all text based, right? Predominantly, it's text. It's
Mm.
not filmmaking. It's not making great music, right? Most
No.
organizations don't benefit from any of that, right?
No, it's a
Because they're
20% BCG study, right? It's the BCG study with Stanford University, 20%, but just asking the chatbot,
yeah.
basically.
I like the co-pilot, and I think where, again, I'm going to talk about a characteristic of work as opposed to a department. Large scale complex investigation,
Mm.
where you have a knowledge bank of information that you either have in your head or is available in PDFs, user guides, wherever, and you get questions. And those questions require an investigation that is going to take anywhere from 5 minutes if the information's in your head to 30 minutes if you have to, at least scan or understand 3, 10, 20,000 documents.
Hmm.
That is an interesting type of work that historically has required a lot of experience. I mean, 10, 20, 30 years. Think about technical support staff, engineers, clinicians, physicians, pharmacists, and other technical type roles. We suddenly have an ability to augment them so that even, again, the great leveler, right, the 30-year guy versus the 3-month guy, suddenly has an ability to answer the most technical questions because they are ably supported by something that is quickly able to look through 30,000 documents and
Yeah.
provide a semi coherent response that can then be, let's say, utilized, not necessarily used, but utilized in crafting an actual response back to somebody. Um,
But that's also, incrementally improving on something we can do. We can search things. We have Google. We can search our email inbox. But
we can, but most of the technical nature of stuff that we need, okay, in
mm,
Google and in generic models is all pretty generic. It's also heavily influenced by SEO, which
mm,
is heavily influenced by people who want to spend money on marketing
yeah, yeah.
and other things. And so it is inherently biased by those who will spend money to make sure that their answer is top as opposed to their answer is the right one that you need. And so
But you're
that would be the worry with search, in that it is, unfortunately, it is an industry in itself, a huge industry,
you're
and
but
so it's
you're
inherently
right.
biased.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And being able to search things is a huge opportunity in generative AI in general. I completely agree with you. What I was alluding to was also, people having it right, write newsletters, in
Mhm.
marketing newsletters, and what you just said is that's a bad idea, isn't it?
Um,
If you want to stand out, have this special,
if you want to stand out, I mean, all you have to do is, like, okay, if
we
I
just spoke
scroll
about
through my
that. That's
LinkedIn,
why.
if I scroll through my LinkedIn now, I can tell which posts have been written by Gen AI and which haven't. And
Yeah,
you know what? I don't even have to read it. All I have to look at is the little icons that it uses each and every time. Okay, the headline will always have a rocket ship. That it
that's
has it
right.
every time. Like, and
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that I don't use Gen AI to. Sometimes I'll get an article and I'll be like, I'll read, 50-page article. Like, I don't have the time to read 6 or 7 50-page articles every day. So I'll use Gen AI to say, hey, I need to know, like, what are the top 20 things that this article is saying? Because they're the things I'm
yeah,
actually interested in, right? I do want to read these things. I just don't necessarily have the time. And so I'll read the top 20 and I'll be like, okay, I really like that. That's a really interesting thing. Okay, make me a post about that
yeah,
one, this one, and that one, right? Again, so I've summarized 50 pages into 20 top things.
yeah.
Now, the issue is, it's going back to your great leveler, okay? Those top 20 things are what it thinks. They might not necessarily be the things that I think. Like, what am I missing
No,
out on? Like, there's so much to do. But I know that when I say create a social post, it's going to create a headline. That headline is going to have a rocket ship. And then each of those kind of 10,
yeah.
5, whatever things I wanted to call out are each going to have their own little icon. And so you
And the
can scroll
generative
through.
AI images as well, right? The mid-journey images. I'm like, I'm a little bit fed up with it at the
Mhm.
moment, but I think I need to get used to it, or I'll become a boomer at a way too young an
Mhm.
age, right? But they're everywhere as well. But I completely see it. Get your point. I also, I actually used a rocket ship for my post tomorrow. I think to need to remove that. I did. I wrote it on my own. I did. I did. But I love that. Never use the rocket ship ever again, ever. Thank you,
You have
Wayne.
to write it into your prompt. Don't use a rocket ship emoji.
No, no, no. But just a final thing. I think also, uh, we already getting closer to that. But what is actually tangible to do with generative AI, right? I talked about actually came up in a conversation that I spoke about platonic AI the other day. That we sort of have a lot of disparate phenomena, but we don't have an ideal. So we don't have the ideas. The idea of the AI idea of there is not really concrete yet. We're still coming to grasp with it. Wayne, you're a tech leader for a global firm, consulting firm. Where do you tell people to focus?
Where? I okay. I personally, where do I tell people to focus? I kind of touched upon this a little bit before, right?
Mm,
Where there is a need for a large amount of understanding of large amounts of at the moment written data.
yeah, yeah.
Um, that's kind of where I go from. And now I wasn't historically talking about this, and it's only as a result of RAG and the ability to train smaller models on very specific data sets
You've
that
been impressed with that. You said that. Yes, you were very
I
impressed
think
with
we're
that.
getting to a point now where mansplaining, which is how I describe most models, will only ever get you so far, right? And I think as an enterprise, if you ever want to, well, actually, every enterprise has its own view of how it does things, what it wants to say, what its policies are, what its procedures are, what its
Yeah,
risk appetite is. Each company is unique in all of that. And so the focus on your things, focus on creating your own version of whether it's an open source model, whether it's a collaboration, whether it's some kind of middleware, whatever it is, but focus that your use of Gen AI on you and your specifics. And at that point, I think
yeah.
you will get, a much greater opportunity to augment your workforce with a Gen AI model. And that is where I'm focusing my clients on right now is, let's get away from the generic
Yeah.
let's try and do anything and everything with these models, and let's get very specific. And that
And
might
on the
mean
differentiation, yeah, yeah.
you might even have a different model per department,
I
or
also
per
say that. I say that
use
focus
case.
on where you're differentiating from everyone else, because what you're doing that everyone else is also doing is probably going to come in the application suites that you're working in anyway. So
Yeah,
modernize those, and then you're going to get it that way. That's how I usually go about it. I hear the same things in what you're saying,
yeah.
but what you haven't said, and that surprised me a little bit from with your background also in automation, is that we used with RPA we also always said digital structured data. That's what you need. But now I
Hmm.
feel we can even go back and look at those heat maps we did back then, that, well, with all the discarded use cases, and say, okay, all of these were due to unstructured data. We could actually start structuring that with Gen AI and start. I think it opens up so many new use cases of those
Hmm.
that we rejected for automation. What do you think about that?
Uh, yes, and I again one of the user cases that I'm working on with a client actually starts with a fax, a
Mm,
fax document.
nice.
And those fax documents are, of course, unstructured. And I would actually say these particular fax documents, and I won't go into details, are probably one of the most unique unstructured documents that you can have as an individual. And so even the greatest intelligent document processing tools with natural language processing models put over the top of them would still require, let's say, 6 to 12 months and thousands, if not tens of thousands of examples to get us into a position where we could automate or get close to automating this particular process. What Gen AI has done with this type of process has given us an ability to do, let's just say, even better results within less than 3 months. And so, great point. Something the unstructured nature of some of these inputs definitely is an avenue that I'm actively exploring with clients. And
Mm.
again, that's what knowledge is as well. Most knowledge banks, these PDFs, these user guides, whatever, they're all they're not even semi-structured. They are completely unstructured documents.
Yeah.
So we were saying very similar things, but just in slightly different ways. So the unstructured certainly is the avenue that most organizations are going down, because guess what? If you already have structured data in a process, why would you be using GenAI in the main for it anyway, right? Because in
Yeah.
theory, you've got other tools that you can do. So why use the multi-tool when all you really needed was a screwdriver, right? It's
Yeah.
like,
Exactly.
again, horses for
If RP
courses.
if RPA, for instance, gives value, just keep on using RPA. You know,
Yeah, like
if it works, it
don't,
works.
don't operate when all you need to put on is a band-aid,
No.
right? And
But
that's the worry.
I think that's brilliant. I think I love the story also about what I would call data transformation 1.0, taking a facts, unstructured facts, and try to automate it. I love that. It's like it feels Stone Agey to me to some extent.
I,
What if we had a Stone Age setting and we needed to optimize it, right? I love
I
it.
couldn't believe it, honestly, when they work with this client. It's like, yeah, we get about 2,000 faxes a week, and I'm like, fax, well, actual fax. They're like, yes. So yeah, we are
Love it.
taking faxes and doing stuff with them. So yeah, highly, we are digitizing an incredibly archaic process.
Love it. I really love that. Wayne, this has been an absolute awesome talk, and I think we've come around a lot of considerations. Also, gotten you think about efficiencies in a ways I don't know if you anticipated that, and I love that. Actually, it felt very explorative, and that's the point of this podcast. But now for the final question, Wayne, what is the only constant?
Great question. You asked me to make sure I had thought about this, and I did, and that was about 4 days ago. So I think the only constant is a drive for a drive to change, driven by a need to be more efficient. Like from an enterprise perspective, like if I think about it, that for me is what we do. I don't necessarily think that's what we. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it feels like there is this. The only constant really is this drive to change, to be more efficient, um, and yeah, I now need to question my why, the why of my life as a result of. Is that all I want to stand for? It doesn't feel like a very strong thing to have spent your career doing.
No, it. I think this whole conversation has pointed out some problems in that, and I think it's a great answer, Wayne. The drive to change being the only constant, or maybe doubt, right? A little
Hmm.
bit of doubt is also good.
Excellent,
Thank
mate.
you
Well, this
for
has
your
been
time.
superb. I love the questions. I can't say that I've been asked many, if any, of these before. So I absolutely loved the episode, and I hope everybody else gets a great buzz out of listening to us two chew the fat.
I think we've just managed to become the longest episode. So that's currently you are the record holder. Thank you for your time, Wayne, and thank you for being on the only constant.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You've listened to The Only Constant, a podcast sponsored by Basico.